coherence healing was something I just couldn't wrap my head around. It was this almost secretive part of an event where you go, and then towards the later parts of the week when the group was coherent, you'd start focusing on individuals that needed your help in terms of fixing whatever was wrong with them.
The coherence healing is a specific form of meditation that Dr. Joe teaches, where we have between 6 and 8 people, we call healers, sitting in a circle. And at the center of that circle is a healee, one person. And Dr. Joe teaches us how to activate our heart center and create a field around our body. And we know when you change your emotional energetic state that that field can actually expand between 3 up to 10 feet wide. It's measurable on what they call squid magnetometers. What we've seen time and time again is that our healees who have a physical condition, who lay in the center of this circle, surrounded by the healers, as they begin to raise their energy, create more coherence in their heart, they are affecting the field around them. And this is starting to imprint on the field of the healee.
The group healings, I like to think of them as, it's a form of biofield therapy. If you look in the literature, biofield therapy, these type of studies come up, and there are many. We ask the question, can these people, this group of people, influence the biology of that person? And so we have a couple of ways of looking at that from a scientific standpoint.
So we've seen, from the data that I started to collect, that 80% of our healees report to us that they have a change in their health condition.
And this is where we then got involved to really accelerate these experiments to the next level. So the question in my mind when I go to these events is, the person comes up and does a testimonial and their cancer's gone in 7 days. And you're like, no way. I mean, as a human, you're like, that's amazing. As a scientist, you're like, bullshit. There's no way that's happening. And so I wanted to design an experiment that would test this in the lab. And so what we actually did is we have lots of cancer cells in the lab. So the idea was, could we bring healers into a room and have them focus around an incubator full of normal and cancer cells? Cancer cells have no body, no mind, but they can receive energy, right? It's a living system. It's the basic unit of life. And the studies that we did were controlled, so that we did it 4 or 5 times. We had controls where cells were sitting in a laboratory that no one has ever seen at the same time from the same population. We had normal cells as well as cancer cells in that incubator, and we looked at the biology on all of this. And what we noticed is that whatever these individuals did as a group was able to change the biology of a cancer cell in a dish. So this starts to build this level of evidence, right? We see these amazing things that happen to individuals that come to these events. We see these amazing things that happen to groups of individuals that are being healed in an in-person coherence healing. And now we can show that this, whatever energy is being created, actually has the ability to change the behavior of a cell in a dish that has no mind, no body. So it's this continuum of studies that's starting to build increasing amounts of evidence to suggest that something's happening.
When I was diagnosed with a multiple myeloma, they started me on chemotherapy right away. The test that tells you they have myeloma is something called serum protein electrophoresis. It was supposed to be 0, but in my case it was higher. Bone marrow biopsy tells you the normal proportion of cells. Usually the plasma cells in your bone marrow are supposed to be maybe 3-4%. 40% of my bone marrow was cancer. 40%. I have a repeat test and shows suboptimal response. I continue to have another chemotherapy with some partial response of the cancer, but then by 5-6 months, I underwent the bone marrow transplant. You're going to lose your hair. You're going to get this, diarrhea that you need to use diapers. it's like a cookbook. You give a chemotherapy and you give another chemotherapy, you don't respond, you get bone marrow transplant, blood test every 3 months, seeing how your disease is doing. You know, being a doctor and feel sick with cancer, it's a strange sensation in the way that we have control over disease and we decide and advise other people what to do when they get sick. I have to trust other people, you know, doing things unto me. So it's a different, it's humbling. In November 2022, I had the blood test, the serum protein electrophoresis showing that was progressively getting higher. And at that time, I discussed with the oncologist about what to do. I knew that it was going to progress. So we decided that, you know, just to start a fourth line of chemotherapy. In multiple myeloma, medically, we're not talking about curing the disease with the chemotherapy. I'm just being maintained, preventing it from getting worse at a rapid pace, but always there will be some expected to have some progression of the disease. I knew that something is not going in the right direction. My wife, as a psychologist, has been exposed to Joe Dispenza previously. She's the one who said, you know, they have this Joe Dispenza retreat. I didn't think that going to the Joe Dispenza retreat would cure me, or I would find the cure of being healed from cancer. That was not the expectation. I went to the retreat in June 2023 with the expectation of being able to meditate. I didn't expect to go into the retreat to get cure from the cancer.
So how did you get signed up for a coherence healing?
I didn't know that it was a healing. I saw in my badge there was like a golden heart, a sticker. I said, you know, I didn't know what is this about. So I asked the person, you know, what is this about? Oh, you're being selected as a healing. You're going to have sessions of healing. It will be towards the end of the retreat. For the coherence healing, I really had no idea what was going to happen. I was maybe a little bit scared about what was going to happen. When I was there for the first healing session, I felt like I was being touched on the leg. I said, this is my imagination. There's nothing. There's no one here. And then when the healers came in, that they do the, you know, they rub their hands, they put their hands over me without touching me. And then what I see is like the ripples of the wave when they reach the sand, that they're moving a certain way. That's the pattern. That's what I see when I close my eyes. I left. I didn't feel much that first time. Then when I went with my wife to the room at that night, it was pitch black. And I noticed that some like bluish color, like fog in the room. And it lasted maybe a few minutes. You know, I thought it was not connected to the healing process. So I didn't think much about that. It was interesting. Then there was going to go to the second healing process. And what happened made the whole difference. Before getting in, there was one of the person directing us, very kind. He said to every one of us, remember that you're worthy. Remember that you're worthy. Remember that you're worthy. And that resonated in me. It said, you know, accept whatever they give you. And what happened was totally different. My eyes were closed, but you know, I thought maybe a flashlight, a floodlight, you know, and then opened my eyes a little bit, there was nothing, it was like dim room. I closed my eyes again was shining this bright light to my eyes. And then I felt this overwhelming sense of love filling up my chest. It was pure love, pure bliss. And tears came down my face. I was, unexpected. I didn't expect that to happen. I didn't ask for that. It simply came. I'm different. I feel like more, the senses are amplified. It's a state of bliss that you experience. One of the persons that was the healers came to me and gave me this little card. And he said, I took this card and it was meant to be given to you. And it said, healed. That means a lot for me. Really, this little card, I keep it with me, and it means a lot for me. 2 weeks afterward, I had the test. I went to the oncologist, I have not been taking the chemotherapy for a few weeks already. And when the blood test came back, the oncologist is very empiric, scientific, Johns Hopkins trained oncologist. He said, Charlie, there's nothing here. There's no cancer. There was nothing, was zero, absent. And he said, well, we don't even have to do a bone marrow biopsy because, he said, no, I want you to have the bone marrow biopsy because I want to prove that this works. When I was diagnosed initially, 5 years ago, 40% of the bone marrow was cancer. So it was progressing. The cancer, it was there and was progressing. And then after the Joe Dispenza retreat, Coherence Healing, the oncologist, he called me on the phone. Charlie, the bone marrow came back, nothing. There's no cancer here. Nothing, not even a residual part that would have expected with the chemotherapy. As a physician, I'm working with other physicians. They see me, they always ask, how are you doing? I said, well, this happened to me. And I explain, my experience with, being healed.
What do you think it is?
It comes from a higher realm, dimension. The blue light is a manifestation in our material world, something superior, something higher than us. It's a higher vibration, and there's no space for the material limitation of disease.